On tonight's National Lottery draw, the 6 winning numbers are confirmed as 6, 20, 29, 31, 35 and 40, and the bonus number is 21. Early indications show that there is one jackpot winner this week, winning just over £9.5 million. It's Match of the Day in half an hour here on BBC One after the news and sport with Peter Sissons and Rob Bonnet.
Tony Blair's first cabinet was tonight sworn in by the Queen. Earlier in the Whitehall sunshine, the new cabinet ministers, including a record 5 women, finally shook off their status as shadows. Michael Heseltine says it's the end of any ambition to lead his party after he's taken to hospital with chest pains. And patience pays off for Nelson Mandela as Zaire's rebel leader finally arrives to talk peace. Good evening. 23 years after a complete Labour cabinet was last sworn in, Tony Blair and his cabinet ministers this evening kissed hands at Buckingham Palace. The new Prime Minister made the final cabinet appointments in a day of comings and goings at Downing Street, and they included 5 women, more than ever before, at the centre of power. Among the principal appointments, Mo Mowlam becomes Northern Ireland Secretary, Harriet Harman goes to Social Security, and Clare Short becomes responsible for overseas aid, a job upgraded to cabinet rank. All 3 get the jobs they shadowed in opposition, but Tony Blair shuffled the shadow portfolios in a number of other top-level appointments. Frank Dobson becomes the new Health Secretary. Chris Smith, who used to shadow health, gets the National Heritage Department. Jack Cunningham becomes Agriculture Minister. Gavin Strang, Agriculture Shadow, becomes Transport Minister. Donald Dewar is the new Scottish Secretary. And George Robertson, the Scottish Shadow, becomes Defence Secretary. Our political editor, Robin Oakley, reports.
Tea for 2 in the garden comes with photographers rather than jam and scones when it's only your second day in number 10. And settling in has brought other problems. The number 10 flat isn't big enough for 3 children, so they'll probably swap living accommodation with the Chancellor next door in number 11. For the senior Labour figures summoned to number 10 today as the new Prime Minister completed his cabinet, offices, not homes, were the chief concern.
Morning,
Alistair Darling, who wasn't in the elected shadow cabinet, is in the real one as Chief Secretary to the Treasury, with the tricky job of policing Labour's pledge to keep to the tight spending limits set by the departed Tory Chancellor. Chris Smith spokesman in opposition clearly didn't know what he was getting, and he came out a peg or 2 down as National Heritage Secretary. Jack Cunningham, who's shadowed that role in opposition, came out of this little lottery as Agriculture Minister. Left-winger Clare Short was confirmed as International Development Secretary, a cabinet post under Labour. She acknowledged the fears about her ability to curb her outspoken style.
I'm going to try and be good, I always do, but I can't help being me. Cheers.
The 5 women in the Blair cabinet are a record, and at least before the battles for their share of Treasury funds begin, they start as friends. One significant appointment was that of the respected backbencher Frank Field as Harriet Harman's deputy at Social Security. His duty will be long-term thinking about how Labour might reform the welfare state. The new Health Secretary is Frank Dobson, not the newest of new Labour figures, but a highly experienced frontbencher. George Robertson's been switched from Scotland to be Secretary of State for Defence. The new Scottish Secretary, charged with implementing the devolution programme, is the former Chief Whip, Donald Dewar.
We've stood our ground through good days and bad days on this over the years. I think anyone who looks at my own personal record, and indeed the party's, will recognise that this is something that we're very determined to deliver on. We've made certain undertakings, and we will do everything we can to hold to them.
And if the media are having problems getting accustomed to shadows turning into the real thing, so are some ministers, like Mo Mowlam.
What job you got, Mo?
Northern Ireland, shadow Northern Ireland, not shadow, Northern
Are you
Ireland.
looking forward to it?
Yes, very much so.
In the post-election sunshine, new ministers in a new government are popular enough to have the crowds flocking to Downing Street and even seeking their autographs. They'll want to enjoy the honeymoon period for every day that it continues. The difficult part of today's proceedings was that Mr. Blair had more shadow ministers in opposition than he had paid places available in his cabinet. So two members of the elected shadow cabinet, the old Labour figures Michael Meacher and Tom Clark, have had to settle for middle-rank jobs outside the real cabinet. But all those appointed know the pressure is on. With 418 Labour MPs to choose from, Mr. Blair won't find it hard to replace any found wanting. Robin Oakley, BBC News, Downing Street.
Conservative Central Office confirmed tonight that Michael Heseltine won't be a candidate for the leadership of his party. The statement came a few minutes after the news that Mr. Heseltine had been taken to hospital with chest pains. The fight to lead the Conservative Party hasn't officially begun, but already several names are coming forward. Our political correspondent Jeremy Fein reports.
The former Deputy Prime Minister is currently in this hospital, the Horton in Banbury, and will stay here at least until Monday. He's having tests after suffering mild angina, but although that's a heart complaint, his family stress he's not had a heart attack and is in high spirits.
How is he feeling in himself?
Oh, I mean, very chipper. I mean, you know, actually being strapped to the bed to keep him there. He's fine.
About 4 years ago, Mr. Heseltine did have a heart attack, and although he bounced back politically, there was always a question about whether he'd be fit enough to lead his party. With another leadership contest looming, there is no question.
We've been hovering and hovering, and we've been sort of mulling it over, and I think probably the fact that, you know, this happened today, insignificant as it is, was the final sort of, right, we won't do it.
Two men who almost certainly will were on a radio programme today, dropping 10-ton hints.
Are you going to be a candidate this time again?
Well, I'm giving it very serious thought, as I'm sure you know, Simon. But I do want to talk to a few more people before making a declaration, and I don't think there's any need to rush into a declaration today or tomorrow. We don't yet know when the leadership election will be held or exactly how it's going to be conducted.
What about you, Mr. Dahl?
Well, my words could almost have been exactly the same as John's.
As the former Cabinet Minister William Hague also refused to confirm he's standing, bookmakers showed how wide open the contest is looking by announcing money was coming in on Margaret Thatcher. They're also assuming Mr. Hague is in the field.
Well, the bookies don't decide, and the bookies don't even know whether I would be a candidate. So I think we can put that on one side. For the moment, what is required now is calm, sensible reflection, and that's what I'm taking part in.
Another colleague has finished reflecting. Peter Lilly, assumed to have been one of the Eurosceptics John Major once called bastards, will say he is definitely a contender in tomorrow's Mail on Sunday. So his name joins the Euro enthusiast Kenneth Clark's, a lineup of two, and already the contest has ideological width. A year ago, developments like these would have been the stuff of extraordinary political drama. But the Conservatives are not the government anymore, and finding a new leader is only the first step on the road to becoming a governing force again. Still, this day is especially notable as the moment Michael Heseltine finally set aside his ambition of leading his party. Jeremy Fein, BBC News, Westminster.
Within hours of her appointment as Northern Ireland Secretary, Mo Mowlam flew to Belfast for a walkabout in the city centre. She said if Sinn Fein want to join the peace negotiations, there must be an unequivocal restoration of the IRA ceasefire. From Belfast, Gary Duffy reports.
Mo Mowlam brings an informal approach to the job of Northern Ireland Secretary, a style altogether different from that of her predecessor, Sir Patrick Mayhew. On a walkabout in Belfast city centre, she was clearly at ease with the public and emphasised her priority was to listen to the people of Northern Ireland. She certainly won some enthusiastic displays of admiration. While the election result itself appears to have raised hopes that the new government, with its large majority, can make a difference in Northern Ireland.
I've no strong political views, but I just hope that they will do their best and that Tony Blair will do his best leading the government.
Well, she's going to have a very, very difficult job now. I'd say Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, 1 or 2 years. You know, we need somebody in there for a long time to transfer out a lot of problems.
While Mo Mowlam got a warm welcome on the streets of Belfast today, the honeymoon period may be brief. The absence of an IRA ceasefire continues to block Sinn Féin's entry into multi-party talks, which are due to resume on June the 3rd, while this year's marching season could prove extremely divisive. On the specific question of involving Sinn Féin in talks, Dr. Mowlam was adamant about where responsibility lies.
Ball is in Sinn Féin's court. That is where the progress needs to be taken, and that's the only way that we can know that we've got a position where the inclusive talks that we would like to see are possible.
But the newly elected MP for West Belfast says Sinn Féin has a mandate to be involved in talks.
There's a lot of talk at Sinn Féin, and all the talk seems to be about Sinn Féin. And it's time people sit down and talk to Sinn Féin, not because we're special, but because the people who voted for us deserve to have their positions worked out, and that's the quickest way to do it.
I would urge Dr. Mowlam strongly to take a stiff position with Sinn Féin to make it absolutely clear that we want to see a permanent end to IRA violence and not to move from that position.
Despite those conflicting demands, Mo Mowlam must begin the search for an agreement that has eluded all of her predecessors. Gary Duffy, BBC News, Belfast.
The new Education Secretary, David Blunkett, has confirmed that education will be the main priority for the Labour government. He said the success of Tony Blair's administration would be judged on the performance of his department. Our education correspondent Mike Baker reports on how Mr Blunkett plans to keep Labour's pledge.
No longer the shadow, Mr Blunkett got straight to work, knowing the Prime Minister has promised education will top his list of parliamentary bills. Braille and tape recording facilities have been installed for the first blind cabinet minister, but one snag emerged. The official red boxes aren't wide enough for Braille paper.
That's a good start. We'll have to have a little briefcase instead.
The former Sheffield Council leader felt strange in government.
Now this makes a real change, because this is the first press conference I've done since I left the leadership of Sheffield where I haven't actually called everybody together to slag off the government.
Unusually, Mr Blunkett wants journalists to question his senior civil servants in the interests of open government.
If we're to deliver and we're to fulfil our pledges, then we need to change the machinery of government. We need a department that is enabling, supportive, that is working outwards with those in the service, relating to the needs of those both in education and employment on the ground, and that is what I intend to do from day one.
It's 18 years and 7 Tory ministers since the last Labour Education Secretary, Shirley Williams. Mr Blunkett might note her troubles over funding and grammar schools. His education bill will include changes to opted-out schools, ending their funding advantages, introducing parental ballots on the future of existing grammar schools, and phasing out assisted places at independent schools. Already, Downing Street has seen the first of what may be many protests calling for more money for schools and colleges. Some doubt that Labour's promise to cut class sizes can be funded simply by ending subsidised places at independent schools.
I'm very sceptical about whether the money that can be released by that commitment will be enough to do the job. And then, of course, we have real problems in terms of class size in the top end of the primary age range and indeed in the secondary schools. There's a massive agenda there in terms of class size that will have to be addressed.
Scrapping nursery vouchers is one promise that can be met quickly, possibly as soon as September. It's a surprising fact that no Labour government has ever introduced a major education act. Even the push for more comprehensives was just a 2-paragraph bill. But Mr Blunkett's plans extend from nurseries to universities. Mike Baker, BBC News at the Department for Education.
The new government has come to power with a mandate also for radical constitutional reform. Already the new Secretaries of State for Scotland and Wales have indicated that devolution will be one of their top priorities. Our Constitutional Affairs correspondent Joshua Rozenberg reports.
Labour's victory in the election brings the prospect of a Scottish Parliament closer than ever before. The Scottish people will be asked whether it should have law-making powers in areas such as health, education, local government and legal affairs. The Scots will also vote on whether their Parliament should have limited powers to raise or lower income tax rates. If a referendum is to be held in the autumn, the Scottish Secretary Donald Dewar will have to get legislation through Parliament by the end of July. The Welsh Secretary Ron Davies will presumably oversee the legislation to set up an assembly for Wales. The Welsh Assembly will take over work from non-elected quangos, although it won't have the law-making powers of the Scottish Parliament.
If we have devolution to Scotland and Wales, that will be a massive constitutional change. And there's one further important factor. that the Parliament in Scotland and the Senate in Wales will be elected by proportional representation. And some people, Liberal Democrats in particular, will say this is a dry run for PR for the House of Commons itself. So we're in for a pretty massive programme of constitutional reform. Indeed, many would argue the most radical programme since the Great Reform Act of 1832.
The government is committed to a referendum on proportional representation for elections to the House of Commons. It has promised to introduce a Freedom of Information Act, and there'll be legislation to stop hereditary peers sitting in the House of Lords. The Lord Chancellor, Lord Irvine of Lairg, has promised a Bill of Rights to incorporate the European Convention on Human Rights into the laws of the United Kingdom. That means people will no longer have to take their cases to Strasbourg. British judges will take decisions which are currently left to the European Court. It's too early to tell what priority the government is giving to the different parts of its constitutional reform package. Observers will be waiting to see who will be appointed to key cabinet committees over the next few days. But with such a time-consuming programme of reform, ministers will have their work cut out to get these constitutional measures onto the statute book, while still keeping their eye on issues such as schools, hospitals and jobs that mean so much to the electorate. Joshua Rozenberg, BBC News, Westminster.
After